Welcome to Duelio episode 3, and this is all going to be from the first person perspective because I'm not going to go back and try to record third person and then slam it in the bottom corner. That just takes a little bit too much editing work for the condition I am in right now because I kind of went down a hill on a set of skis and just biffed it face first, and my left shoulder is just kind of killing me. I'm like standing up against a wall, like rubbing a medicine ball into it, like trying to get it to stop hurting. And it's not working, so we're just gonna drink some beer and we're gonna talk about some asymmetric duels. Now, this asymmetric dueling setup is G56 versus the Mark 24 Spitfire and the Mark 22 Spitfire. And what prompted this conversation is the guy that I'm dueling, Darbray, I think is his name. I don't know how to actually say it or if it's short for something else. Anyways, he's a British dude, I think, and he's not bad at dueling, so it's worth an attempt, and he can play to the differences of the planes. He is, for all intents and purposes, 85 to 95% as good as I am. Maybe on some days I'm a little bit more in tune. Like G56, I do feel like I have an edge against him just because of my familiarity with the plane, but it's also not really the focus because both of these planes have very similar performance, yet the Spitfires are a lot harder to use effectively, and this kind of brings me to the point of ergonomics in sim. And ergonomics in sim is a little complicated, but just in turning ergonomics, the Spitfires have kind of a problem in so far that they are maybe overmodeled. Maybe they're more historically accurate than, say, like the G56, where like a lot of data doesn't exist. And it means that even though the turn performance of the Mark 24 and the Mark 22 might be on paper slightly better or slightly worse than the G56, actually trying to utilize any of those theoretical advantages doesn't really apply as much, just because it takes both of us a lot less effort to perform at kind of like the maximum of what the G56 can do as opposed to what the Spitfires can do. Because the Griffin Spitfires from our testing, and I didn't really expect this to be the case, by the way. I expected the Mark 22 and the Mark 24 to kind of handily hold like a lag pursuit trajectory and just kind of like eventually win against the G56. But that is the case for ARB. But in Sim, the AOA limitation for the G56 does make it turn noticeably better. But I still didn't think that amount of better was going to offset the engine power and turn rates of the Mark 22 and the Mark 24, which is, to me, was really surprising. Now, do I think that the G56 is definitively better than both of those planes in a dogfight? I'm not so sure. I'm still skeptical because I think that you can train with the Mark 22 and the Mark 24. If you learn how to really control the plane, you can maybe materialize some of its performance attributes into like a noticeable advantage. At the same time, the differences are really close, and in kind of like just making attacks and being consistent, it seems that the G56 is better. And this is kind of one of the issues with asymmetric duels, is that asymmetric duels kind of end up being partially a skill check, and they're also fairly reasonable for comparing like the performance attributes of planes, because a lot of time when people discuss planes, they kind of discuss them in a vacuum on paper, and things get construed of like, I will use the power to weight to do this and that, and it's like, well, let's see how well that materializes. Like right here, he's trying to use power to weight, and he's too slow, and you can shoot him. And this is one of the issues with like people say, just energy fight, energy fight, energy fight. It really comes down to how both players end up playing. Now, these trajectories are relatively interesting, and we're just kind of doing the basic opening start. And a couple of these will turn into like a pure rate fight. Some of these will just turn into kind of like our normal attack cycle of one person goes up and tries to go for an early attack. Like right here, he's going to go for an attack. I'm going to try to deny it. And this is where stall control comes in handy. The G56 just seems to be easier to control in the stall. The Spitfires, once they get slow, the engine torque kind of like overpowers them. They get really kind of squirrely, whereas this thing just feels nice. It's just very docile. This is kind of like very similar to the way the Key 84 handles. Like the Key 84, when you put the combat flaps out, is probably the most predictable plane in the game. It is very, very easy to fly. This, on the other hand, it's probably about 20% harder, but it's still pretty easy. And then if you look at the controllability of the Spitfires, those are like 200% harder. It's very difficult to get the maximum turn rate, the maximum performance, and be able to focus on the trajectory that you're doing and focus on the attacks. And this is kind of the problem I had with when I switch over to the Spitfire, is that yes, I can sometimes get the attack, but the attack itself will sometimes result in me just like falling out of the sky. Now, with more practice, could we make it work? Could we make it more decisive? Could we make it closer? Absolutely, we could make this a lot closer with a lot more practice. But at the same time, the effort to get in tune with something like the Mark 22 and the Mark 24 would be very difficult, at least I think. Whereas the G56 is just kind of it's just kind of on rails, and because we can dedicate basically 50 to 60% more of our effort at monitoring trajectories and making attacks, we are not actively fighting the plane. Like the Mark 22 and the Mark 24, you just feel like you're fighting it most of the time. And there's going to be someone in the comments, it's like, oh yes, the 22 and the 24 are either really good and you're just not flying them right. And that's fine, that's a good point. I would invite you to come try a similar setup with me in this, and let's see what they can do. But at least on the surface, at least at like a preliminary kind of evaluation, I think the G56 ends up being better. And the Mark 22 and the Mark 24, they sit at 6.0, and then the 24 sits at 6.7, which is pretty reasonable for AirRB, because AirRB, you don't have the controllability issue. Like in AirRB, the controllability of the Mark 24 is actually really good. It's very strong. Whereas in Sim, just because the tendency of the plane to kind of sort of want to fight you, at least in comparison to other things that have similar turn rates, turn radiuses, etc., means that really utilizing what ends up being kind of like marginal advantages in top speed might be difficult. It might be a lot less consistent. And I think a plane's consistency in Sim is almost as important as its performance, because it's something like the K84, even on days when it's bad, which is very few, it still ends up being really good. It's really solid. The same thing with the G56. No matter what, when you dogfight someone in this, even if they're in something that's better, because you're kind of sitting at like the maximum performance that it can get out of the plane, very small differences in trajectory will matter for this. And this is why this plane is probably one of my favorite to play in random battles, and you will almost never catch me dead in something like a Mark 22, a 24, or even an LF Mark 9. Now, I know the LF Mark 9s has a lot of potential. It's very powerful, especially like when the guns work. Currently, we're in real shatter meta where the guns we're in real shatter like 2.0 where guns don't work anymore, but MG151s are very strong, and then the Hispanos are kind of mid. They sometimes work, but it means that especially in a close fight where you get one reasonable attack, it means that something like the G56 is able to kill immediately, whereas the Mark 24 might do only superficial damage, or the other guy will fly in between your guns where you shoot, and just the pacing of the guns causes them to fly through the guns, and you get no hits, or you get like something that's insignificant. This is another one. This is really good, very aggressive trajectory, and we just drop the nose in and we get the hit, and that's how quick it is. That's how good the MG151s are. Like in very close battle, I do prefer the MG151s. Now, we are switching back to the Mark 22. Now, to be fair, in context, I took the Mark 22 in the first set of duels, but I didn't record them, and it was kind of like the same results of, yes, I could play around the 56, but I never got like a significant advantage. So these later duels where I'm a little bit more in tune with the plane are still fairly representative like what my performance was. I come in, I get an attack there, and it's not really because I had a better attack. It's because he kind of decided to play a little bit of energy. I think if he flaps into it, I think he wins. But we're going to settle into kind of like this looping rate fight, I think. And we're going to see just kind of how close the G56 ends up being. And spoiler alert, it's awfully close. I would argue that it's better. Maybe there's a way to do some vertical stuff where the 56 cannot keep up. But even in a longer rate fight that I kind of deleted from this video, the 56 did end up eventually winning, which is very interesting to me. I don't know if it's the pure performance of the plane. I might be pulling too much angle of attack, might not be managing my speed correctly. But, as I said before, at least on the surface, the 56 is more usable and might actually be slightly better in the dogfight. Now, whether or not this really applies to EC is a stretch, depending on the starting position of each airplane, the altitude. It's very conceivable that the Mark 22 and the Mark 24 will outperform the 56, but with the supercharger setup of the 56, where it doesn't really lose any power till above 6,000, it's really kind of optimized for 7,000 meters. It means that kind of like in all the altitudes that you will fight in at EC, the 56 is really potent. It is going to be a hard plane to win a dogfight with. Like right here, I try to play energy on him. I'm assuming he can't hit this shot, but even with the low velocity 20s, he's still close enough, and I'm basically stalling myself out that he's able to hit those, and I don't get to survive the stall, and I don't get to stall in a position where I can actually utilize a slight energy advantage. Like the 56 just has a very good turn rate. It's not particularly fast, but it also has like those attributes of just like really good predictable stall control, coupled with guns where if you fly in front of it and it gets a hit on you, it's very likely to critically damage your plane. Now this is kind of the same thing. He tries to play energy on me, and I get the good Hispano damage, but notice that as soon as I hit him, I kind of put everything into that shot. Like as soon as I hit him, my plane's spinning out of the sky. If I miss, I stall into a bad position, and then I probably lose. Same thing. Come in, we're going to try again. I think this is another one where the Mark 22 wins, maybe not. Very similar start. We're almost blacking out, and he's below us, so he's going to go for an attack. But maybe we're just outside of where he can point. Let's find out. We go up, and he's going to stall out, and he stalls out almost in a position we can take advantage of, but look how the plane's trying to fight us. We stall into a bad spot, and then we get hit, and we're slammed out of the sky. Goddamn fucking shoulder hurts. Let's do it again. And we're just doing this to run it down. I'm trying to get like a full context of not like, this is not like a completely one-sided duel, but it's more or less, I think it's the Mark 22's fight to lose, at least in sim. Maybe in the future we improve. Maybe we become Mark 22 enjoyers. But right here, he has the radius. I didn't think he was going to shoot there, but if he gets first attack, there's really nothing we can do. And so at this point, we're going up, but we have crit wing root, red on the other side. It's just not going to happen. Engine torque's going to basically try to throw us out of the sky, so we try again. And we're going to do again. We go the old merge. And we're going to win this, but we're not going to win it because the plane's better. It's because the Syrian lead turned in front of us, and we're going to get free shots. So we can ride his ass, but this is where the Hispanos come in. It's like the damage is very inconsistent. So if you don't get solid gun time from behind, you might just end up with him tanking the shots and then shooting you in the face again. But even here, even with WTRTI and all the good stuff, we are struggling. We are trying to maintain rate with him, and we're almost there. But he is just ahead. You can see him kind of slide up in the cockpit. He is sliding to the outside of the top vertical bar, and he cuts down. As he cuts down, we're able to cut into him. Maybe not the best trajectory move, but we come up, and he's about ready to pull into us. But we are just riding him. But the only reason we're able to get into this position is because of the merge. A bad merge, especially in similar planes, will offset any advantage that the other one has. But we're not hitting anything. We finally get a critical. It doesn't really kill his plane. Like, he can keep fighting, and if this was an EC, we would have to pursue him and try to get the kill, and the longer we pursue him, the more likely it is that we get third-partied. So for me, a lot of the time, just having good guns and a decent enough flight model is more redeeming than one that just has performance but really bad guns. Now, the last thing, we're going to end on like what one of the critical problems with the late Spitfires is that it's really easy to rip them, and it's not a him problem, it's not a me problem. If you pull too hard on a stick and you don't know about it, you are going to make the wings on the plane explode. And I did this at least twice in the first set of duels and at least once in the second set. This is after I'm already aware that the plane will rip its wings. I don't overpull, or I don't pull what I think is too hard, but trying to ride that line between ripping and giving up too much space to the other guy ends up being rather difficult. And it means that cumulatively, even if the Mark 22 and the 24 might perform better on paper, in practice, in pretty much every situation in most games that I'm dogfighting in, I'm going to prefer the G56. Anyways, that's the Duelio video. If you like it, subscribe. If you don't, go rip your wings. I don't care.